Growing up in the 90s in Kenya involved hearing a lot of stereotypes. Finish your food. Do you know people in Turkana are starving? Or, you're lucky you stay in Nairobi. People in Mandera are being attacked. Your parents will tell you how they used to walk for several kilometers barefoot just to reach school. We have all heard of such and even worse, but the question has always been, how true are those stereotypes? The only way to confirm or dispel such kinds of stereotypes is through seeking knowledge and traveling. Unfortunately, the world is not a rosy place, and bad things tend to have more publicity, and unless you set out in search of the truth, we might end up living in constant fear, fearing a threat that will never come. The former Northeastern Kenya province consists of 3 counties: Garissa, Wajir, and Mandera. My ultimate goal was to go all the way to Mandera Town in Mandera County. The first time I attempted the trip, I didn't make it past Wajir due to insecurity issues. Buses and cars had gone on strike, insisting they needed escort to be able to travel all the way to Mandera. The alternative I had was to board a truck carrying goods, and the price had hiked double the amount from 2,000 shillings to 4,000 shillings. Because of those challenges, I had to cut short my trip to Mandera and return to Nairobi from Wajir. This time round, I had the same challenges, but we will get there. Northeastern Kenya, formerly known as Northern Frontier District, used to be part of Somalia. Somalia was colonized by both the British and Italy, and it gained independence in 1961. The British, who also colonized Kenya at that time, had put the Northern Frontier District as part of Kenya, and after Kenya gained independence in 1963, the British forfeited the land to Kenya and didn't return it to Somalia, despite people in the region who were dominantly of the Somali ethnic group preferring to be part of Somalia. This was the beginning of conflicts in the region that lasted decades. My journey began with boarding a bus to Isilo, which was the first town I wanted to. Most buses that go to Northeastern region are found in Isili in Nairobi and go all the way to Wajir or Moyala. Isili is known for having a large population of the Somali community, where they have opened shops of all kinds of goods and services, making it one of the busiest places in Kenya. If you want to buy affordable goods, Isili has the reputation of where you go to find pretty much anything, especially household goods and apparels. Reaching the bus terminus, I boarded a bus called Liban Bus that will take me to Isiolo. The bus charged 1,000 shillings and the journey to Isiolo was quite straightforward. Let us go and see what inside the bus looks like. That's the outside. Let's go and look at the seats. The tea is so good. I have the worst seat in that bus. Back bench sitting in the middle. Yeah. It's going to be a long journey. Perfect. A lot of construction is currently happening in most major roads around Kenya, and this makes the travel a bit slow. This is a journey that you can do with any type of car regardless of the size. In fact, you can drive all the way to Moyala, the border of Kenya and Ethiopia, with any type of car since the road is smooth tarmac road all the way. Going onwards to Mandera though needs at least a 4x4 car or a car with very good ground clearance, unless it rains, and in that case, better just leave your car at home. We are making a quick pee stop. Yeah, I was so super pressed. And there's no toilet here, so people are just going right behind those bushes. So yeah, that's the situation. The journey continues, maybe another 1 hour 30 minutes before we arrive at the location. So roughly 150 kilometers. Yes. Let me go back to the bus and sit. I just arrived in Isilo. I'm walking towards the hotel, check the prices. If it's fine, I'm going to go there. If not, I'm going to walk around more, look for something cheaper. I don't want to spend more than 2,000. That is my budget for sleeping for today. We reached Isilo by 2 p.m. and I booked a room in Prestige Hotel, which cost 1,300 shillings. The room was actually very good for the price. So this is what the hotel looks like. I just saw like a poster while walking along the road and then decided to book it. This is the room, and this is what the room looks like. It has this huge bed. I have put my things here, and there's a TV. It's a basic hot shower in Isilo. Yeah, at night it gets very cold. Toilet, and then there's the chairs. There's only one huge design flaw. Where these tables are, there are no sockets. So since there are two tables on both sides of the bed, I've decided to put one here so that I can work while looking at myself. And with that, I was ready to explore Isilo Town. Isilo Town is built like a small cosmopolitan transit town. The main highway road goes all the way to Moyala, which is a border town with Ethiopia. It is dominantly occupied by the Rendile, Somali, Boran, Meru and Samburu communities. The main town itself is not huge, and you can spend roughly 1 hour walking around. Isilo as a county has several private ranches and national parks, which make it a popular tourist destination. Some of these are Buffalo Springs, Shaba National Reserve, and Bisanadi National Reserve, which joins with Meru National Park and has a spectacular view of the Tana River. The river Ewasonyiro can also be accessed from Isilo, as it acts as the border between Isilo and Samburu County.
Originari kwa kuwa ziko na features zote. Karibia customer, jichagulie simu kwa bei nafuu kabisa. Kuanzia 1,000 utajipatia simu iliyo maridadi kabisa. Simu zetu zote tunaziuza kwa bei ya wholesale.
With all that Isilo provides, it unfortunately has a dark past. In the 1960s, due to communities wanting to rejoin Somalia, there was a rise of protests towards the Kenyan government in what was called the Shifter Insurgency. The conflicts led to at least 2,000 people, mostly of the Somali population, being killed. This, unfortunately, was just one of the several massacres that happened in Northeastern Kenya since independence. In 1980, the Garissa Massacre happened, with estimates of over 3,000 people being killed, and a similar style massacre happened just 4 years after, in 1984. This happened close to Azizia town in what is referred to as the worst human rights violations to ever happen in Kenya. It is estimated that more than 5,000 men of the Somali ethnic group were rounded up and taken to the Wagala military camp, where they were put in inhumane conditions without any food and water before being executed. It was only until the year 2000 that the Kenyan government admitted to wrongdoing, and the massacre has been subject to further discussion through the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission, which was set up after Kenya had post-election violence back in 2007. After exploring the town the entire evening using a boda rider, I went back to my hotel room where I was ready for day 2. Day 2 didn't start exactly how I had planned it. You see, I don't like traveling long distances with matatus. That's exactly why I used the bus from Nairobi to Isilo. Unfortunately, for the second journey, there was no bus that I could get very early in the morning. Here's why I don't like matatus. They are terrible at timekeeping. Buses or trains leave exactly when they are supposed to leave. A matatu on the other hand has to wait till it gets full for it to leave. That is why I always avoid them whenever possible. I ended up waiting at least 3 hours before the matatu was full and we could get on the move. The matatu cost 800 shillings and after waiting for what felt like eternity, we were on the move.
Ile ya kwanza ya Marsabit. Ai, wawili na sio ni mtu. Oh. Ni how much di Marsabit? 800. Yeah, no one. I'm going to have to wait for some time for this to be full. Okay. Let's have some tea. Ni ngapi? Kuna kitu kama mandazi hivi? Chapati. Sawa, nipe hiyo. Nilete moja. One chapati and tea.
Despite the morning setback, the road to Marsabit is one of the most beautiful driving roads in Kenya. If I owned a Subaru WRX or the Mitsubishi Evo, this is one road I will frequent to come and drive as fast as 100 km per hour, the legal speed limit. Every time I have used the road, I have also never missed seeing either a giraffe or a Somali ostrich. The highlight of this road though remains to be the magnificent Mount Ololokwe, standing tall at 1,942 meters high. This mountain is loved by hikers and rock climbers equally. If you haven't had the chance to do either, seeing it with your own eyes is enough to make it breathtaking. I, in fact, have an unproven statistic that the road to Mount Ololokwe is the most photographed road in Kenya. All the best trying to prove me wrong on that. The journey to Marsabit was short, or so I felt because of how I kept guessing around and marveling at all its beauty. This was despite sitting in a very uncomfortable seat next to the driver with my legs cramped up the entire journey. I have never been to Marsabit town and this was my first time in the region and it wasn't exactly what I expected. As is the assumption that northeastern Kenya is very dry, Marsabit town is surprisingly green. The weather was cool and there were several trees around. The town was surrounded with hills, with one of them being the beautiful Marsabit National Park. Beyond those hills surrounding Marsabit town is where the semi-arid places begin. Since Chalbi Desert, maybe the most popular desert in Kenya, is also in Marsabit, just a mere 140 kilometers from Marsabit town. While in Marsabit town, because it's a small town, I was conflicted on whether to spend the night or proceed to Moyala. One thing I usually avoid during my travels is moving around at night. I prefer being settled in a hotel by sunset, which gives me enough time to rest, plan the next day and easily leave to walk around and explore a town at night if I feel like it. Because of this, I figured if I were to continue to Moyale, I would reach the place very late and might end up struggling to find accommodation since it's a completely new place to me. There was nothing much to do in Marsabit Town, the same as Isilo Town, since the towns are mostly transit towns where you go to take a rest before diving deep into the national parks and other points of interest. I ended up booking a room in a hotel called Nomad Trail Hotel, which cost 2,000 shillings, and that was the end of my day in Marsabit Town. I'm in Marsabit. I have been debating for I think the last 1 hour if I should stay in Marsabit or just proceed to Moyale. But I have decided to just sleep in Marsabit because it's already 3 p.m. So by the time I reach Moyale, it's going to be around 7 p.m. And yeah, I just don't want to risk traveling at night right now. There's still a curfew in Kenya, so which ends at 10, which starts at 10 p.m. So I have decided to book this hotel. It's called, I think, Nomad Trail, and let me show you what the room looks like. It has a TV, a bed, a very good working table. I like it. Oh, and sockets next to the bed, something that so many hotels don't have or don't do. There's a closet, something we never use because I never carry so many clothes. And then this is the bathroom, hot shower, and the toilet is at the side. So yeah, that is the room tour. The food is here, arrosto, basically goat meat, some soup, rice, cabbage, and sukuma wiki. Yes. The food is good. I love it. Hello and welcome to day 3 of the Northeastern Kenya tour. The plan today is to go get a matatu, most likely, because I don't think I'm going to get a bus, and go to Moyale and then explore Moyale town. See you in a bit. On this day onwards, everything that was going to happen was completely new to me. I didn't know what to expect, nor did I know what lies ahead. I got up as early as usual to take a matatu that goes to Moyale. The matatu cost 1,000 shillings. The road to Moyale is again one of those roads that you sit alone, days or months after the time you traveled, and it will just play in your mind. You will remember the drive and what you felt while doing the drive. It is that good. When driving this route, beware of strong crosswinds that can easily topple over your car if you drive too fast. Surprisingly, the road didn't have any major roadblocks as I had expected. The drive was smooth all the way with amazing landscapes. I think I should one day just do this trip with the primary focus of doing landscape photography. I reached Moyale and it was like nothing in my imaginations. First, the town is on top of a hill, which is very odd for such a major town. The only other town in Kenya that I can say is on top of a hill is the Elgeyo Marakwet town. Most towns tend to be on lowlands, shielded by hills around. If you plan on doing some good workout every day, maybe consider moving to these towns and you won't require a gym subscription. The other thing that I found to be very odd of the town is the sand. It had sand that is almost equivalent to what you will find in Mombasa, Diani or other beach towns. There is no river or lake close by, and River Dawa is still a few hundreds of kilometers away from the town. Maybe someone well versed with the geography of the area can explain to us how that came to be. The last shocking thing, which isn't that surprising though, is how busy the town was. I'll be right to say it's the most developed and busiest border town in Kenya. It doesn't compare to Bungoma, Namanga or Hispania or any other border town that I have been to. Again, maybe this signifies the long relationship between Kenya and Ethiopia. In fact, it's that relationship that gave birth to the entire road project being paved to the good standard it is today. It was important for Ethiopia, which is a landlocked country, to easily get goods from the port of Mombasa and the recently launched port of Lamu. Upon reaching Moyale, as usual, first thing was to get a hotel and then set out to explore the busy border town and cross over to Ethiopia. I booked a room in the members hotel, which was right inside the border crossing, and it cost 1,800 shillings. I just took a hotel room in this place called Members, which is just close to the border post. And let me show you how it looks like. Not that huge. That's the bed. It has a TV and a fan. And that's the toilet, hot shower. Yeah, it's a small room for 1,800 shillings. It's slightly bigger, and the biggest advantage is it has a fan. The room that costs 1,500 shillings doesn't have a fan. So my plan is to rest for maybe 30 minutes, and then after that try and go cross over to Ethiopia, maybe just for a walk, and then come back. Try to find where I'm going to get the buses for Mandera. Yeah, I think I'm doing Mandera tomorrow. Finally, we're getting there. J-I-L-L-O. J-I-L-L-O, Jilo. That's his name. He's going to take me to... We are going to cross over to the Ethiopian side and just take a walk and explore the area. So, yeah, let's go and check out the other side. Afterwards, I met up with a guide named Jilo who took me around, and we crossed over to the Ethiopian side of the border. Crossing over to Ethiopia was easy. The only thing you need is your national ID if you're a Kenyan. This restricts you to the border town of Moyala only though. I wouldn't advise going all the way to Addis Ababa without a passport. When we crossed over, at no point was I asked for my ID. We then got a tuk-tuk and took a ride to the end of Mandera Town and started to slowly walk back down towards the Kenyan border again. The town on the Ethiopian side of the border is also called Moyala, and it is much bigger than Moyala on the Kenyan side. One day I will do a proper tour of Ethiopia. This day wasn't it. It is also unfortunate that there's currently conflict going on in Ethiopia, and we can all just hope that peace prevails. The walk to Ethiopia is the second time I did a border crossing, the first time being crossing to Tanzania from the Namanga side. I love borders because they tend to be a clash of cultures, especially when you visit shops and see all the different items from the two countries. My third attempt to do a border crossing landed me in a cell, but we will get there in just a few. We walked around with Jilo and had a short rest at the Coquette Borena Hotel on the Ethiopian side. Here, I had the best injera of my life and goat meat. I felt like all the times I have eaten injera in Nairobi, I was being lied to. It was that good, which is a huge compliment since I am one of those people who generally dislike eating and can easily forget to eat. And I think that's why for most parts I avoid talking about food in my videos, because I rarely get excited with food. So maybe I need help. We then proceeded to cross back to the Kenyan side of Moyala and had a cup of Ethiopian Garissa coffee, while talking with a few guys in a small hotel. When traveling to unknown places, it is normal to be afraid and doubt yourself if you really want to travel. There is always the lingering question, do I have to do this? I can just stay at home comfortably and continue with my normal routine. Why do I need to travel? I say this because while talking with Jilo and his friends at the restaurant, I started doubting myself if I really want to go to Mandera. I thought maybe I should just go back home or back to Isilo and then Garissa or Wajir, a familiar place that I've been to. The stories I was being told didn't give me any confidence at all to continue with the trip. The first suggestion I was given if I want to go to Mandera was that I need to dress like a Muslim, wear the thobe and turban on my head. Jilo himself said that is the one place that he can't go because he's afraid of the terrorism, and that he has even previously been offered jobs to do there but he refused to go. But again, I was being told to not worry much and that I will be fine and should just travel. All these mixed information just made it hard for me to decide on what to do next. And when I went back to the hotel, I had a lot of thinking to do. Before going back to the hotel, I talked to a few policemen and military men who are close to the border, and they all told me that I shouldn't worry and that I can travel to Mandera. What they told me not to do though was to travel from Mandera to Wajir by bus. Again, this conversation was just depressing, but I had already come too far to give up. This was supposed to be the day I traveled all the way to Mandera, but unfortunately I didn't because I was given wrong information. Previous day, very late in the evening, I went and paid 1,500 shillings for a car that was supposed to take me to Mandera. The car was a Toyota Land Cruiser that was ferrying cat, popularly known as Miraa. Miraa is a stimulant drug used mostly by drivers so that they don't sleep. Chewing it makes you very alert and you can go for days without any sleep. And also, I'm not talking from experience. Miraa is legal in Kenya and is grown in the highlands of Mount Kenya, mostly Meru and Embu. And the drivers who ferry it to Nairobi have a reputation of being reckless and overspeeding. Well, which is basically how all Kenyans drive. We just lack the Miraa stimulus. Back to the story, I was directed to a shop where I met a lady who I paid 1,500 shillings for the ride to Takaba. Takaba is the center town between Moyale and Mandera. The distance from Moyale to Mandera is roughly 350 kilometers, which should take 6 hours, but because of the non-existent roads, it takes as much as 14 hours. The car was to only take me to Takaba, and from there I was to get another car that would take me all the way to Mandera Town. The drive from Moyale Town to Takaba took 4 hours. The road was the second worst road I have ever been on in my life. At some points, it looked like you were just driving along a ditch, then coming out the other side and driving on rocks, and again back to a ditch. Most of the road was gravel, and at some point we drove on a tarmac for about 20 kilometers. And then we were back right to the gravel. The ride was uncomfortable and it felt like we were going very fast, yet it was just like 90 kilometers per hour. The one takeaway from that ride is that the Toyota Land Cruiser is an extremely good car. As a wise man once said, if you want to go to the desert in comfort, you can drive a Range Rover. But if you want to come back, you go with the Toyota Land Cruiser. The landscape to Takaba was striking. The vegetation was green, but the ground was rocky and sandy, which either means it had rained recently or I completely forgot what I was taught in geography. I couldn't make any sense of the landscape. We passed some high rocks, which reminded me of Kitmikai in Kisumu. There were some beautiful hills and outcrops, which again I can only compare to hills I saw in Sibiloi close to the shores of Lake Turkana. It was just beautiful. After the grueling ride, we reached Takaba Town and I tried finding a car that would take me to Mandera Town, but I had no luck. Takaba in itself is a very small town which is in Mandera County. Takaba is also said to be the safest town in the larger Mandera County. On the way to Takaba, we passed one bus and I was told if I wanted to go to Mandera, I'd have to wait for that bus because it gets escort all the way and it will reach Mandera very late at night. Which, as I said earlier, traveling at night is one thing I didn't want to do. By the time that bus was going to reach Takaba Town, it will take maybe another 4 hours. That's how fast we were going with the other car. I decided to book a hotel and surprisingly, I found a very good hotel, which still looked new, called Grand Azizia Resort. It was also very close to some hills that I had seen before and I thought I'd explore that. The hotel room that I got cost 1,500 shillings. This is the hotel room. There's a chair. That's the bed. Wardrobe. Bathroom. Hot shower. Toilets. But the thing I love the most about this room is this corridor. Yes, wait for it. Look at that backdrop. I think I should go climb that. From the top of the hill, you could see the entire Takaba town and it was silent and a very good location for relaxing. I assume it's a very popular spot for the locals judging by how almost all rocks had names. In a few million years, humans of that time will explore the places and wonder who Ahmed is, and why he wrote his name on a rock and added a heart shape with an arrow and sigh at how primitive we were. I sat on top of the hills calmly looking at the landscape before a group of baboons started to gather close by and I decided to leave. Again during this time, I had new doubts debating if I should still continue with my journey to Mandera Town. At this point, I could have just said I have already reached Mandera and that would be good enough, but again, the goal was to reach Mandera Town, the farthest town in Kenya. It's only when I am traveling that I can wake up as early as 6 am. I was up very early to get the first Land Cruiser that will take us all the way to Mandera Town. Buses get escort to go to Mandera Town, but not the Land Cruisers. Unfortunately, there was no bus that early. I was denied the front seat, which was odd and I found to be a bit discriminatory, but I had no options. The travel this time round was even worse, sitting at the back of the Land Cruiser on a bench. This now was officially my worst travel ever. The whole journey was uncomfortable. The road was gravel and at some places sandy. We kept hitting holes and we would be thrown up and almost hit the roof of the car. There is just no way anyone could sleep even for a minute on that ride. The people seated at the front maybe were better off. We breathed all the dust, and this time I genuinely felt like cursing my decision to do the journey. But this is always a reminder that to thousands of people who stay there, that is their normal life, and they have to go through all that with no other option. I tempted my privilege and persevered throughout the whole journey. To distract myself, I started peeping through the canvas that was covering the back to marvel at the landscape. We passed several hills that I will easily compare with what you will see in the Tsavo East National Park. At some point, we passed a very dense forest, which I can only imagine the wildlife and how untouched it is. That is unless it has been occupied with some terror groups who hide there to plan their evil ideas. From Elwak, we were on tarmac for maybe another 50 kilometers before we were back to the terrible road. The next town was Buladothai, and from this town onwards, I don't think I could see a road. If you've never been on that route, I guarantee you will get lost. We were driving literally along River Dawa. River Dawa is a river that acts as a border between Ethiopia and Kenya. It begins close to the Malkamari National Park, which is the least visited national park in Kenya, and the river stretches all the way to Somalia. I was told the last remaining rhinos in the park were moved to Meru National Park, and I can't find any information on what animals are currently in that park. Proceeding with our journey, the car flanked River Dawa for most parts of the remaining journey, and the river was just amazing. It had palm trees along it, and I didn't expect it to be that huge. That's what she said. The river was very wide and the water moved with a lot of force. I'd say the river is almost comparable to the river Ewasonyiro, or even River Sagana. Every few minutes I thought the driver will just mess up and drive us straight into the river, but luckily that didn't happen. I have maybe said it several times now, but the landscape of Northeastern Kenya is very diverse and beautiful. You will be driving along a flat desert land and in no time be close to a river with very green palm trees, and again back to a forest. It is one of those things you just have to see, and I think people who explore Kenya and don't visit these sites miss out a lot. We can only hope the road from Isilo to Mandera will be tarmacked in the next few years and open up the region to exploration and even the safari rally events being moved there because the terrain fits safari rally perfectly. Finally, we reached Mandera Town, and I only knew this because there was tarmac in the town. Mandera Town looked bigger than Isilo Town, which makes sense since it's a border town, even though it's one of the most restricted borders in Kenya. Instead of looking for a hotel, the first thing I did this time was to try and get information on if I can get a car that will take me to Wajir town the next day. That's when reality dawned on me and all the things that the cops said came true, that I couldn't travel from Mandera to Wajir. The vehicle owners couldn't let me book as they say they don't allow people from down Kenya. That's how other Kenyans are referred to. The explanation though was that in case the bus was stopped by Al-Shabaab terrorist group, if I was in that bus, I will simply put everyone else in danger and increase the chances of people being attacked. One solution I was given if I really wanted to travel from Mandera to Wajir was to this time dress up as a woman in full burqa clothing covering even my eyes. Now, I did some acting in high school where I got to dress up as a girl because it was a boys only school, but I don't think this was something I was willing to do. I decided I was going to book a flight back to Nairobi because there was also no flight from Mandera to Wajir. That's how restricted traveling between the two towns is. With that information, I booked a room in the Red Sea Hotel, which cost 2,500 shillings. That was the most expensive hotel I slept in throughout this journey, and it looked grand. This is the room I have taken. Cost is 2,500 shillings. So, desk, TV, and I think this is the fanciest bed of this trip so far. I like it. It looks nice. It looks grand. Cupboard and a very, very huge toilet and bathroom. Yes. Oh, AC. Yeah, in Mandera you can survive without an AC or a fan. And yes, that is the room tour of the Red Sea Resort here in Mandera Town. So time to rest for a bit as usual, then go check out the Somali border, and I don't know if the Ethiopia border is so far away. You can check out both. I rested for a bit and was ready to explore the town, even though my mood had taken a hit. The hotel was kind enough to give me a taxi guy who was going to show me around. The plan was to simply go check out the Kenya-Somali border and then visit River Dawa. I had no intention of crossing the border because I was already told it is heavily guarded and movement is extremely restricted, but I just wanted to see it. Unlike the Moyala border, which had beautiful structures and looked cool, the Somali border was plain and boring. Okay, it was just ugly. There was nothing. It was just a plain field with one tiny barrier and so many military officers. The taxi guy kept pointing it to me and I couldn't even see where it is. But then after some time I saw it and that was it. Time to drive to River Dawa and enjoy the calming waters of the river while seated under a palm tree. That's when we got stopped by a group of policemen and I was questioned. Apparently, nobody just goes to Mandera to visit. You need a reason and a letter to visit Mandera. That was odd. In all my travels around Kenya, I had never heard of information like this. After being questioned, we were taken to the police station for further questioning and my day just continued to go from bad to worse. The taxi guy and I were handed over to the anti-terror police unit, and as it ended up being, we slept in the cell that night. Before that, I was taken back to the hotel and all my gear and bags were searched. My laptop, camera and phone were all searched and they went through all my files. What was supposed to be a good chill day ended up being an entire afternoon and evening being grilled with the police. This started maybe around 3 p.m. and as it ended up being, I slept in a cell that night. You might think camping and traveling prepares you for situations like this, but the reality is it doesn't. It's one thing to go to a hill and voluntarily camp and sleep in the ground. It's a completely different experience sleeping on a cell floor, not knowing if you will walk out free and what will happen to you. It was just days before this that there were protests in Kenya against police brutality. After two young brothers, Emmanuel Mutura and Benson Jiru, were beaten up and killed with the police due to walking around past curfew hours that were imposed due to COVID. Every young Kenyan man has their heart skip a bit when they get to interact with the police, and it's hard to shake the feeling that things might get worse. I was lucky it didn't. The previous day, I had already booked a flight to return back to Nairobi, but I missed the flight because, well, I slept in a cell. I went through even more grilling that day, and by the time I was being cleared and being released, it was around 3 p.m. noon. At that point, I had reached my breaking point and I just wanted to go back home. I went back to the hotel and shelved all plans I had, like going to see River Dawa. Now when I think about it, I feel like I regret doing that, and maybe I should have just gone to see it, even for a few minutes, but at that time, that was the right decision. I didn't want to risk being arrested with the Ethiopian military and being locked up. The airline I had booked was kind enough to reschedule my flight to the next day, and at no extra cost. I was released, went straight back to the hotel and stayed in my room till the next morning, ready to travel back home. I had one worry on this day, and that was, what was I going to tell the military police at the airport? I knew they were going to stop me, and I had to explain what I was doing in Mandera. As I had thought, that's exactly what happened, and at the airport checkpoint, I was stopped and grilled again. I was asked which NGO or company or media station that I work with, and why I was in Mandera because they have never seen me before. Telling them I was a tourist was a not good enough answer. I was held up for maybe another 45 minutes, and I was only held by the same police who had grilled me the previous day. They talked to the military guys and I was released. I was in panic mode the entire time until the time I boarded the flight and it took off. It is only at that moment that I felt relieved and I felt safe and knew that I would be okay. During the flight, I marveled and reminisced of the bittersweet moment I experienced. Mandera was to be the last town I visited in Kenya before I started exploring the world. Maybe it prepared me for how to deal with people in new regions where I will not know anyone nor have help easily. Will I ever visit Mandera again? Hard to say. I still want to see River Dawa, but maybe I will do it from the Ethiopian side. The trip remains to be a highlight of my life. It also marked my long goal of visiting each and every county in Kenya. When I reached Akaba, at that point, I had fulfilled that dream and I had visited each and every county in Kenya, all 47 of them. Unfortunately for this trip, I couldn't proceed to Garissa and Wajir, but regardless, there is a lot more to explore in the Northeastern Kenya region. Northeastern Kenya is still a very complicated region. Throughout history, the locals have experienced massacres with thousands of people being killed. The region remains marginalized with poor access to basic needs like clean water, and thousands of people are currently facing a drought. Electricity access is not that stable with frequent power cuts, and the roads are terrible, making access to the place very difficult. With all that though, the people are resilient and have been able to make a life for themselves despite all the hardships. It is well known that the people from the Somali origin currently run many shops in Nairobi, and they are branching into real estate and other industries. The town of Wajir, Garissa, Isilo and Mandera are all well developed, some even better than the older towns in other parts of Kenya. Despite the marginalization story and bad governorship in Kenya, it's only through traveling that you can get to see the other side of the story, and with that, hope for change as well as get to explore other regions and enjoy what they get to offer. Until next time, see you in the next destination.